you know, it's funny. It's only by looking back that you go, aha, you see, that's how that happened.
Yes.
So, you know, when I go way back, I worked for CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and I always thought when I started to work for them, although I started to work in production as a production assistant and then producer and on, but I always sort of imagined myself being on air because I, you know, fancied myself always a performer, and I had performed as a kid forever, you know, from the time I could get anything out of my mouth. But, and you know, when we had a strike or something, you know, which made everybody very unhappy and me very happy, I had to go on air because management could go on air and do shows and stuff, and I thought that was wonderful. But mostly I was in management.
Right.
And production. But one of the things I did was we moved to Edmonton, Alberta, which is home of the biggest and best Fringe outside of Edinburgh, Fringe Theatre.
Right.
So
it's a festival, yeah.
It's a festival, and it's the Fringe is a festival, much like any other festival where there's show after show after show, and you can, for not much money, go to 3 or 4 shows a day, and it's lots of fun, and 2 will be great, and 1 will be terrible, and 1 will be okay, and you know you've had a day, and so I pretty soon thought we should be a sponsor of this wonderful Fringe festival, and besides, that would give me an excuse to get out of work and just go to Fringe shows. If we were, you know, then I have the right to do that. So that happened, and I got very, very familiar with how it worked and what was good about it, and then, you know, sort of flash forward to the early '90s. There were big cuts in CBC. My job got cut, and they were closing television stations, and all kinds of stuff was happening. We moved to London for 3 years. Just the most wonderful time of my life, and I took a marketing diploma program, and came back and lived in Vancouver, and the Fringe was on in Vancouver, and it was pretty small, and they didn't have much in the way of sponsorship or support, and I decided they needed me. So I went to them and I said, you need me, and I would like, you know, to help you, and I will be your marketing director. Oh, okay. Would you do that? Yes, I would. And for, I don't know, nothing, so little, I was the marketing director, and I did that for 4 years, and I felt very good about it, and got, you know, Starbucks and the newspaper and all kinds of solid support for them. So I thought that was great. And then, you know, as happens, I was working with someone I just loved. Then she moved on, and somebody else came on to be director, and she and I didn't do as beautifully together. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I've done this. But in the meantime, I'm going to all of these shows because that's part of the deal. And, you know, it was the usual. Some are great, some are... But I went to one show where this doesn't happen anymore. A guy wearing nothing, zero, and no script, no clothes and no script. And I and everybody else spent the entire time just thinking, oh my God, oh my God, how can he? I walked out of that, 1, ready to leave this job, and 2, thinking, I cannot be that bad. No matter what I do, I can do no worse. I can do no worse than this. So I decided that I would write a show. I'd done a lot of writing. I was a copywriter.
Right.
And and I wrote for radio, and
Had you written anything that was in the genre of more creative stuff, or was it stories or?
Well, not really written stories, but when you're doing advertising, I'll tell you what I will say. I wrote for the ear.
Right.
Always, and I wrote very succinctly. All the kind of writing I did had no fluff in it.
Yeah.
Couldn't.
Yeah.
You got it once, and if you didn't get it, shame on me,
Yeah.
So I did it. And I thought, I'll do this, and it was called 57 and Still Lying About My Weight, so that was it. And I worked very, very hard at it and got the good title, and did it, and by God, it went over well, and I ended up traveling with it.
Right.
So then I thought, I'll do another one. I'll do another one, and then I got older, and 5 shows later. And then there was Oldish, and then there was the pandemic.
Right.
So a better person would have written 2 more shows, and
I think it was very hard. I think the pandemic.
I don't know, wasn't it?
It's subtle, because if you kept to yourself, in your like this house, we were in this house, we hardly went out at all.
Yeah.
So you didn't suffer really, because you're connected now with all this technology.
Yeah.
But still, it took its toll on people. It
And you didn't know till after, in some ways.
That's right.
Yeah.
I went through all the way through, and did a reading of this play I've been working on for ages, and suddenly, when things began to get better, and you could go out, I just suddenly lost the will to live, in a way. I don't mean that literally, but I just didn't want to do things anymore. Mm-hmm. And it was over. It was like, you muddle through and you do good stuff, and I've got oodles of Zoom recordings of my improv, and they did some great work. But then suddenly it came to an end, and I just thought, so I completely agree.
Yeah. So, I'm doing some rewrites, and I'm adding some things, and I had a very, very, very close friend who died last summer, and I started writing some things about her and about that, and I might incorporate some of that stuff for the summer, so it may change, but here we are.
I want to talk about your the thing that interests me about your writing itself, and because you've I think that when you were in the writing group, which I hope we can lure you back into being again. But I would notice that and everybody in the room noticed how vivid these things became in one's imagination as a listener. And so you've talked a little bit about no nonsense and say it once, but if you were advising somebody about their writing, what is it what's going on with you when you think about?
When I'm writing, I'm just there's a story, there's something I want to say, and I think probably the first thing I do is I start very fast. I start by saying it.
Right.
Do
you use a tape recorder? Or
No. I just write.
Yeah.
But I start by, I didn't say that correctly. I start by, I don't build up.
Right.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that if I figured out that I got a story. Well, for example, I'm trying to remember, but my friend who died this summer, I started to write some things, and she was just such a good friend, and she traveled to every show that I ever did, and I told her I was going to write a show about her, and she knew when she was going to die, and she was thrilled that I was going to write it about her, and she was thrilled that I was going to write it about her death.
Yes.
And she said, read me what you've got. Read me what you've got. So I thought, oh my God. All right. So I go in and I read, and I should have brought it, but it was like, my friend Patsy is dying. Yeah, I know, we're all dying, but Patsy's really dying. Like it could be Friday. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I write, and what is she doing? She's loving it. She's laughing. But I guess that was what was on my mind. Yeah. So I don't
beat about the bush.
Bush, yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested, then you're interested right away.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I got to how we met and
right.
etc. But the fact that she was dying and it was happening in a week or in 2 weeks was what was on my mind right then.
This is one of the things that kind of a theme about this podcast or whatever it is that creativity gives you the sense that life is not just a complete tale told by an idiot.
Yeah.
And so your friend, I'm sure, was just thrilled, first of all, that you thought of her enough, but that she says, oh, please read me from the play you're writing about my death.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She wanted me to read, yeah. I know. You know, it's pretty hard to talk about your process, but I think that there's something emotional.
Yeah.
And if there's something emotional, it's going to come off the top. It's going to start it.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the real secrets of creativity is you just get on the bloody bicycle and start to pedal.
It's really true. It's really true. And I'm convinced that the Fringe, which is, I know it's a hobby horse of mine, but the fact that nobody but the audience is saying, not quite good enough, is a huge part of that freedom.
Yes.
Because you know, there's kind of room in that whole thing for almost everybody.
Yes.
And
including the man on stage who didn't write a word and stood there naked.
So it seems. So it seems. And a friend said a very nice thing to me a while back and said, you're going to do more. You're going to keep doing it, aren't you? And I said, well, you know, I guess, yeah, maybe I am. Maybe I've said all I have to say. And he said, no, you're doing it for all of us. It was just wonderful. He said, look, you're telling all of our stories.
That is very true.
And
I mean, I've only seen the one, but I've heard fragments from others.
He said, you can't stop because we're still growing older and things are still happening to us. And don't stop. You can't. And I thought, oh my, what an amazing thing he said to me. And it's on my mind. And when I have these sort of thoughts that are, you know, horrible and funny at the same time, I think, I guess I should keep doing it, because if I'm feeling it, You know, who's unique? Nobody. You know, we're all going through the same stuff.
And it's wonderful that you are able, that you have that gift.
Well,
Or maybe you
yeah.
disagree.
No.
Or maybe it's another way to put it.
No, you know how we are about our own stuff. You tend to diminish it, and yet, when he said that, I thought, well, maybe I do keep on. You know? Maybe I do keep on.
Yeah.
Maybe I will.
Well, I've not seen the performance, only the two of the readings of the play, but I can imagine that when you're off script and able to, I mean, those kids were so, I wish I had a video camera, but they were so riveted. Yes.
Of them,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. They were so riveted. And I think sends a message to them about what they can do. About what's possible for them to do.
One of the guys at the school said to me, "Oh, you're really 20, aren't you? You know." I mean, he was just being cute, etc. But the message is, people your age surely are not doing what you're doing. And I think that's a good thing for them to see too.
Yes,
You
I
know?
do too.
My first show,
Yes, tell me a little bit about these different shows that I haven't seen.
well,
The one about I'm still trying to lose weight.
57 and still lying about my weight. Well, you know, in that show, I talked a lot about divorce and marriages and, you know, just getting up there and doing all that it's great. It's just great to do it. If you know, and this is not just me, I know, with other people too. Once you write it and it's out there
Yes.
or on a page,
Yes.
it's no longer so much, you know, there's not much angst anymore.
Yes, yes.
And you tell the story, it loses its power in a lot of ways. And I think it's a very healthy thing to do. And you know, this is a sort of terrible story, but I was Hep C positive,
that's right.
and you know, in fact, they came up with this wonderful medication, and I took it, and I'm just fine, and isn't that great? But some previous show, before this medication, you know, I wrote in the show that, you know, I was Hep C positive, but I hadn't had any symptoms, and I was sure I was going to be fine. And I realized, and this seems nuts to you, that I had told no one. I had actually told no one in my life except my husband. I had not told my kids, and I had not told my parents.
But you were okay to tell them.
But I was, well, now this is, you know, it was a good story. And so it was material, and I was going to use it.
Yes.
I mean, this is horrible, but this is performers, and this is writers. Yeah.
But I think that somehow you can get a handle on it by distancing yourself from it, by putting it out. And I think that's one of the functions of creativity.
Exactly. But, okay, so I'm going to get up there and do this. I realize I haven't told anyone, and I have to now.
Yes.
I have to. Because you can't do this and have your kids go,
"What?"
So I tell them, and they want to kill me. They are so furious at me that I haven't told them. And my mother is just, oh my God. from that day forward, no more. I mean, I will still write about it, but I'll tell.
Yes.
And I just didn't want to worry them
No.
because there were no effects, and I was convinced nothing was going to happen, and it could be quite serious, and people are dying of it, you know. But I thought, how can you do this to people? And I thought, that was over. So now I tell.
Have you thought about publishing these plays?
It's been mentioned before.
Because I think it would be
but-
a worthwhile, and you might even find someone else might want to do the show.
Well, do you know something interesting? I'd forgotten about this, but I think it was 64 and No More Lies. I was doing it in Winnipeg, and after the show, Margot Kidder, it turns out, was in the audience. And she came up to me and she said, I would really like to do your show. Can I do that show? Would you? You know?
You see, I think you must. Okay, you're going to make a declaration to the 30 people who watch this podcast. Okay, no, I think you must, because you will find that there are actors. I mean, Margot Kidder, when she saw it, that it spoke to her in such a way she thought, I could play the living daylights out of that character. They don't think of it as your story anymore.
They don't. It was so weird to me. It was very, very weird. I've had that happen. It wasn't always Margot Kidder, but I've had that happen.
No, you will find, and I think that it would be a nice, I don't know whether, I do not know, but how it could end up. But I do think it's kind of, because it's everybody's story, it's no longer, doesn't belong to you anymore in a funny way. Of course it does. But
well, you know what's interesting to me, Andy, is that all the things you say to me about what I could do with what I've got, I hate to say it, but are not so interesting to me as what I can still do.
Yes.
Because I'm always thinking about the next show rather than,
I think that's very,
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I
can
think,
do with what, I don't know.
That's such a wonderful way of thinking, is I'm much more interested. I'm terrified of what I'll do next because I never think it's going to be good enough.
Well, I mean, that doesn't me either, of course. And so it's lines like you know, the fellow I told you about who said, "No, listen, you have to. It's for all of us. Everything you're going through, you're not just going through it alone.
No.
But if you get up there and you say it, we feel better.
Yes.
We get to laugh at
Yes.
it. I think, okay.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
encouraging.
God, this reminds me of that scene in Oldish where you're at camp and the underwear thing and that is so embarrassing for a teenager. And yet those kids it hit them with the force of a railway locomotive.
It did. And you know what? That's the best response I've ever had on that, because they're 5 years away from it and everybody else is 60 years, 70 years away from it.
Yes.
So they
Well,
killed
again, it
themselves.
gave them a chance to, whether it actually happened to them, but some embarrassing,
Yeah.
you know, some embarrassing thing having to do with your body,
Exactly.
you know, that you really don't want anybody to know about. But, and then I think that that's one of the things that that makes art so useful, I guess you'd say, is that it puts into words or pictures or especially the dramatic arts or the narrative arts, I guess you could say, a way to reflect on some analog in your own life.
You know, I have a pal who's a wonderful writer and performer on the Fringe. I mean, he makes his living doing it. He's just fabulous. Wow. And after Oldish in Vancouver, he wrote me a note, and it was really lovely. And he said, You know, his parents, I mean, he's late 40s.
Right.
So his parents are getting older and his dad is sick, and this made him feel so much better about what was going on for
Yes.
his parents.
Yes.
And I've never
You're going to do Oldish.
in Edmonton.
Right.
And I, you know, I want to add.
Well, how many performances will you do?
Well, I will have minimum 6, probably 8.
Well, that's good. So that's
Yeah.
a decent
Yeah,
run.
that's decent. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. And then I think I will probably save Patsy for the next show. And yet I thought I think to myself, God, do people want to hear more about the goddamn end of life, you know? And I guess I just have to trust that I can be funny and that I'm not alone in this stage of life.
No.
And because there are more and more things that happen that are, I don't know, noteworthy, noteworthy, and you know, I mean, we, and I mean my contemporaries and I, will sit around and talk about, so what's going to happen with your body? What have you decided? Okay? What do you think? I mean, this is a conversation, and it is hilarious. It's hilarious. Well, you know, we were going to do a natural burial, and you know how much they want for that? And people are incensed at the price, and then there are people who want to, you know, go back to wherever it was they came from and have a headstone. There are people who want to be thrown into the wind. But these are things that I'll tell you something. I cannot believe that I'm involved in a conversation like that, you know. So
Yeah, you can't avoid it. So I don't think there'll ever be a shortage of interest. I mean, it's something that I think when you're young, you don't think about it. I would just not think about it, any of it.
No.
As you say at the beginning of your play, it was marriages or jobs or, you know, look at the job I got or,
yeah,
you know, all
and
that
who
stuff.
and what and who you're.
Yeah, who you're dating or.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, now it's like the phone rings and you think, oh, God.
Exactly. There's no good news. Yeah, let's make that absolutely clear, right?
Yes, that's right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and now I sort of understand why old people got so excited about births and weddings. Now it's clear.
Yes.
Because life is filled with the other stuff.
Yes.
And this sort of is so celebratory and takes your mind off
Yes.
whatever.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know?
And reminds you that there are people somewhere enjoying themselves,
Exactly.
which is a kind of hopeful thought.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, what hurts today, what doesn't hurt today. And then the other thing is sleep, gone. Sleep, just effing gone, you know? So, but you talk to people.
I think I
and
resent that more than anything else.
Well, that's
3
it.
hours and I wake up.
You see, yeah, hello,
And then
give me a call.
Okay,
Right.
Okay, so then I think I'll do something constructive. So I write.
Do
I write
you?
badly for about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And pray that I'll get tired. Because if I get tempted into turning on my iPads type thing, I'm finished.
Yeah, don't, because that is not going to be boring.
No, that's right.
That's the right.
That's right. No, you've got to be bore yourself to sleep.
Yeah, yeah,
Sleep is a kind of relief.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, the sleep thing. is really, and I haven't talked about sleep yet. I think I'm going to talk about sleep in the next one.
I think this is wonderful. I think it's a great.
Well, I mean, so negative. But if you do it with humor, but we're all there.
Yes,
that's the
I
thing.
think it's negative only if you're not in it. I mean, if you're in it and you can develop some distance from it, some perspective on it.
Yes.
That's what, we just like we can make our lives, what was it, Milton, a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven, we have that capacity. So I think that I think this may be true of all art, but it takes what's impossible to deal with and puts it out there where you deal with it. I think it does for the artist as well as the people who, and then you see things, I mean, maybe this is stupid to say, but, Harmonious Bosch and the visions of hell that are so beautiful and awful at the same time. So, but it's you probably would not want to share some close confidences with Harmonious Bosch or be a boyfriend or a girlfriend, but it is this, and I think the distancing. It's funny about distancing is like kids love. The reason they love horror movies is because they don't realize it can happen to you, and if that's the blessing of it. So you get terrified in the theater.
Safe.
Where it's safe to be terrified.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful thing. So you're going, I'm thinking of kind of wrapping up now, and I want to thank you for being my first guest.
Thank you for asking me, and it's been great fun.